Welcome to the Renovation Roadmap Podcast, your ultimate guide to navigating the world of renovations and home improvements. I'm your host, Jen Orr, and I am thrilled to be your companion on your renovation journey. Renovations are like embarking on a thrilling adventure, but let's face it, they can also feel like a roller coaster of challenges. We're here to equip you with the essential tools and knowledge you need to survive your next remodel. I'm not just your host, I'm also the owner and principal designer of Studio Red Interior Design and Remodel. With years of experience as both a general contractor and designer, I've accumulated some insights and strategies for ensuring your project stays on track and on budget. Think of this podcast as your go-to resource for valuable tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories that will empower you as you embark on your renovation. Together, we'll navigate the ups and downs of renovation and emerge with homes that truly reflect our dreams and aspirations. So let's dive in. Okay, let's dig right into another episode. Thank you so much for joining me again. Hey, I have loved your feedback from those of you who have been listening to the show and have let me know what you've thought of it. I absolutely love hearing that and hearing that you are getting value from these episodes and that we're getting to know each other a little bit. So thank you so much for reaching out. If you have been listening and you haven't reached out to me, I would love to know what you think about the podcast. And you can reach out to me on Instagram, DM me at Studio Red Interior Design. I would love to know what you think about the show so far. I would also love to hear what you would like to learn on the show. Are you getting ready to do a renovation? What is it that you would love to dig into and learn more about in embarking in your renovation? So I would love to hear that as well. So today I want to dig into client expectations. And I know some of you are thinking, well, I am the client. So why are we going over, expectations of what the contractor, the designer should be setting with me? And I really want to go over these client expectations because I feel that client expectations can either make or break a project. If you are a contractor or you are a designer or you are in the field, an industry leader, setting these expectations up with your clients are going to either leave you with happy clients, or it could get you in serious situations where it doesn't matter how beautiful their home is. At the end, they have had a horrible experience in the middle and in between. And we just don't want that. And if you're a client listening and you are a homeowner and you're about to embark on a renovation, knowing these expectations that the people that you are hiring and working with should be setting with you. If they're not setting those expectations, you as the client can advocate for those. And you can set those expectations and you can ask these questions and dig deeper into what the expectations for the project are. So it doesn't just have to be on the contractor to set these expectations or on the designer to set these expectations. You as the client can also set these expectations for the project with whoever you're working with. And what I have found over the years is that when these expectations are set and talked about and dialed in, the project runs so much smoother. Don't get me wrong. There are still things that come up. There can still be issues along the way. However, when you have clear expectations from the beginning, those things that come up, they just tend to be a little bit easier to digest, a little bit easier to tackle and to face head on. Because if good expectations have been set from the beginning, you might have already even anticipated this. And you might have already thought ahead on how you are going to address problems as they arise. And so when things come up, it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit smoother. It's not as detrimental to the project if you have clear communications and clear expectations from the very beginning of the project. So let's dig right in. So the first expectation that is extremely important for any project is the expectation that there is no perfect project. There is no perfect project. I don't know what it is about our society, but we so badly want to and strive to be perfect. And the reality is, none of us are. None of us are. And when we head into renovations, we have this ideal that we can achieve a perfect project, whether that be the contractor that feels they can achieve the perfect project, the designer. I mean, let me tell you, as designers, we are perfectionists. We want everything to be perfect. And as homeowners, we are putting a lot of money into this project and we want it to be perfect. This is our home. This is where we live. This is our project, and the ownership of it goes so deep that we want every little piece of it to be perfect. So, the first expectation I'm going to set with you today is there is no perfect project. We are imperfect people running companies and trying to do the best that we can to accomplish amazing things. And with that, there are going to be mistakes. There are going to be problems. There are going to be hiccups. There are going to be things that are so outside of our control that there's nothing we can do about it. There are also going to be things that are very well inside our control, and it slipped through the cracks, or somebody failed us. And that is reality. So there's your reality check for your week. We are not perfect people. We are not perfect people, and we mess up. Now, with that said, with that expectation that there is no perfect project, something will come up. Sometimes it's real bad. Other times it's little things. But no matter which way you go, there is going to be something that does not fall in line perfectly. So know that, expect that. When you expect that, when those problems come up, when things arise, it is a lot easier to address them and move forward in them and in the solution than if you're expecting everything to run so perfectly smooth that when it doesn't, everything unravels and the whole world is in turmoil because something came up, right? So I always try to set that expectation at the beginning of projects, and I want you as a homeowner to set that expectation for yourself. If you're a contractor or designer, start setting that expectation with your clients. We are going to do our best to prevent problems from arising. It's not that we have this lackadaisical attitude of, oh, well, things are going to happen. There's no perfect project. So whatever. No, we are going to do our best to try to achieve as perfect of a project as we possibly can. Chances are something in some way, shape, or form is going to come up, and it is not going to be perfect. Early on in my business, I was doing a full home renovation, and I was so new. I was so green, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And I set up the wrong expectations with my clients. And I had a particular client where it was my first time managing a major renovation. And that saying, under promise and over deliver, or over promise and under deliver. In this scenario, I very much over promised and under delivered when it came to expectations for the project. And I set expectations that I myself could not achieve. I set expectations for things that were well beyond my control. For instance, permitting. The permitting process is not in my control in any way, shape, or form. That is in the hands of the city, and we have to wait for them. We are under their timeline. And this was right in the midst of COVID. So things were so backed up. And I gave timelines that I didn't even know that was possible. I should have never been giving timelines. Never. When something is not in your control and it is so up in the air, you should be setting expectations that you don't know and being honest with that answer and giving ranges that you think might be a ballpark. However, setting the expectation that you could be totally off. It could be twice as long, right? I didn't do that with my client, and I failed that client because no matter what, at the end of the day, she has a beautiful home. She loves her home so much. She loves the design of her home. However, her experience through the renovation project was miserable because every expectation that I set with her on the timeline failed over and over and over again because I was trying to promise her something that I could not promise, and setting an expectation with her that in the end I underdelivered on. So when we're setting expectations, it's not just even the expectations of the project, but it is being honest, being completely and totally honest with where you're at. There's nothing that drives me more crazy than asking a subcontractor how long something is going to take them. And they give me the answer that they think I want to hear in order to please me. And then they take 2 weeks longer than they said. That makes me insane. Insane. I do not want to hear what you think I want to hear. I want you to be honest with me. Give me your true deadline, because in the end, it's going to take you the amount of time that it takes you. And if you don't know, tell me you don't know. Don't give me an arbitrary answer and then fail on that expectation that you're setting with me. Okay, so I hope that is making sense in the realm of expectations. Expectations can make or break a project. And being clear and being honest And setting those from the beginning is super important. And the expectation that there's not a perfect project, nor will there ever be. If you are out there and you are like, I had the perfect project, I went through the perfect renovation and not one thing went wrong. If you're a contractor, if you're a designer, if you have done that, we need to talk. I need to have a conversation with you and learn your secret because it hasn't happened for me. I've had really smooth projects, really, really, really smooth, almost perfect projects, and there's still something. There's always something. So if you've had that perfect project, we need to chat. Okay, expectation number 2, which I started to go into a little bit, but client-contractor relationships. Setting expectations between the contractor and the client and what that relationship looks like is so important. And I'm going to give a list of things that are things that you should be talking to your contractor about. So if you're a contractor, you should be talking to your client about this. If you're a client, you should be talking to your contractor about this. Or if you're doing it yourself, you should be talking to yourself about these things. You should be running through the list and saying, okay, what are we doing here? And making sure that you have a clear understanding of the project. So first item, scope of work. You have to get so clear on the scope of work of the project and make sure that you are on the same page with your contractor. This is a detailed document that is in writing. This is not a walkthrough that you just talk through the scope of work and then the contractor starts. This is a document that is in writing, that is an agreement with the contractor and the client that says, this is what we are doing. And the designer. This is the design. This is what you have approved as the client, as the homeowner in the design, and everything is spelled out. I even venture to say that what is not included is spelled out. What is the contractor not doing? Is that clear? Has that expectation been set? We are not throwing away the appliances. We are keeping the appliances. You are not doing anything with the appliances. Is that spelled out? We are not demoing the trim. We are keeping the trim. That is not in the demo scope of work. What are the things that are not in the scope of work? Are they spelled out? Spelling out the scope of work and setting the expectation of what the project is or isn't is extremely important. And when those lines get blurred, what ends up happening is you get halfway down the project and the client thinks that we're doing one thing and the contractor thinks they're doing something else, and we've got confusion. We have misunderstanding. We have a project that is not being implemented the way that both parties see it being implemented. Again, going back to why hire a designer, why have a design plan, having these details laid out ahead of time sets the expectation of what we are accomplishing in the project. So clear scope of work. Your processes. What's next? Right? There's always that question. What's next? What's happening next? As a contractor or a designer, trying to get ahead of the what's next question will serve you so well. You don't ever want your client to get to a spot where they are thinking and saying, well, what's next? What are we doing? What are the next steps? You want to lay the next steps out in front of them in each phase of the project so that they're never having to wonder what's next. So this might be automated emails that each step it goes out and it says, this is the part of the project where this happens. This is what to expect. We are going to do X, Y, and Z. And then after that, we're going to move into this phase. Setting expectations is not just at the beginning of the project, it is every step of the way throughout the project. And that happens through emails, that happens through conversations. But it needs to be a continual thing that is happening throughout the project. Now, if you are a client, a homeowner, and your contractor is not giving you what's next, be asking that question. What's next? What can I expect next? This phase is done. You've given me an estimate. I've signed the contract. What can I expect next? Have that question in your vocabulary that is asked on a regular basis, because what you think might be happening next in your head might not actually be what's happening. And we never want to get in a place where we're assuming that the contractor is going to come and do X, Y, and Z, and that's not at all what they're doing. So asking that question, what can I expect next? So that if they're not proactively giving you that information, you are seeking it out and receiving that information so that you are on the same page. Another area that you want to make sure you have clear expectations on is the project schedule. What is the schedule? What does the schedule entail? Is every part of the scope of work included in that schedule? What are expectations around the schedule? I love to give the project schedule and give an analogy around it, that the project schedule is like a river. It ebbs, it flows, it moves. It is not a stagnant from point A to point B line. And that is because things change, things move, subcontractors get sick, a family member dies, life happens. Life happens in the lives of the people that are involved in the project. And that affects the schedule. Timelines change. Sourcing products move and evolve. The lead time can change. The delivery date, the driver got in an accident and the cabinets were on the truck. Things happen. Again, expectation. There is no perfect project. Stuff happens. Things happen that's outside of our control. It is so important to have a project schedule and to have a baseline of what we are trying to achieve. Setting the expectation with that schedule, though, that it will change. It will change. It is not going to flow exactly what is laid out at the beginning of the project. It's just not going to. And having that expectation from the beginning is so valuable and so helpful. Also, having buffers in that schedule. If you are a homeowner, asking that contractor, what buffers have you put in this schedule in order to allow for ups and downs and things moving and changing? Have you allowed those buffers? Ask those questions. Maybe they haven't thought about adding those buffers. Maybe they're a contractor that continually has delays in their project because they've never thought to add those buffers. Adding those buffers helps the rhythm and the move and the flow of your river that is the project schedule. And the ultimate goal is to end by the end date. That is the ultimate goal. Things might move, things might shift, and delays might be had within the middle of the project, but a good project manager is going to make sure to have room and space for that movement and still complete the project by the said deadline. So, expectations around the schedule, it's going to move, it's going to change. You want to set expectations with the people working on your project of time of day. When is work going to be done? When are you coming into my house? When do I want you to come into my house? When are you leaving my house? How are you getting access to my house? Setting those expectations with the client and the contractor are so important, because the last thing you want is to be sleeping in bed and have a contractor knocking at your door at 7 a.m. to get in the house and you had no clue they were gonna be there at 7 a.m. And let me tell you, contractors are not always great at proactively communicating this piece of information. And subcontractors are also not great at communicating this piece of information to their contractor or their project manager. So we need to dig for this information. We need to proactively seek out this information. Certain contractors work during certain times of the day. That is their schedule. That's what they do. And others completely different schedules. And so knowing who it is that you're working with, knowing when the tile guy wants to do work, what are their hours of operation, knowing if a contractor is going to be in for only a few hours that day, and then they need to allow for something to dry, so they won't be back until the next day. Knowing these things and having the expectation is going to help you so much, especially if, these days you're working from home or you have animals that you need to, put outside or lock up. That's another great expectation you want to set with homeowners and the contractor, people coming in and out of your house. What's happening with your animals? Is it okay for, contractors to pet your animals? All these little tiny details. You want to set expectations around the cleanliness of the job site. Whose responsibility is it to clean the job site? Will the job site be cleaned up every day? Every week? Never? Who is cleaning up the job site? What are your expectations around the cleanliness of the job site? A homeowner might want that site cleaned every day. They are going to track in and out and through that space in the evenings and in the mornings when work is not being done. There needs to be no nails on the ground at the end of every single work day. Things need to be cleaned up, put away. Other homes, nobody's there. No one's living there. It is off-site, and maybe it can go a few days with leaving tools out for the next day or whatever the case may be, but setting those expectations. What does the cleanliness of the job site look like? Smoking is an expectation you want to set. Are contractors smoking? Where can they smoke? Where do you want them to put their cigarettes when they're done? The last thing we want is to walk out into the driveway and see cigarette butts lying around, right? Where did they put them? Are we going to provide a spot for them to put their cigarette butts? Are we going to tell them, I expect you to discard of, I expect you to go to the street to smoke? What are your expectations as a homeowner? Animals in the home. Touched on that a little bit. What are the expectations around the animals in the home? What do the contractors need? What do you as the homeowner need? Expectations around working from home. Are you working from home? Is there going to be noise? How much noise? Can I hear that noise from my office? Do I need to strategically schedule meetings during certain time frames or certain days? Do I need to work outside of the home for a period of time? What are the expectations around your workplace being at your home during renovation? A porta potty. What are the expectations around where these contractors are going to use the restroom? They are going to have to go to the bathroom at some point during the day while working on your house. Is the contractor providing a porta potty? If they haven't told you, ask that question. Or are you as the homeowner going to decide, I am going to order a porta potty. I do not want them using my hall bathroom, restroom. What are the expectations around where people are going to use the restroom? Preferred method of communication. Does the contractor have a preferred method of communication? Do you have a preferred method of communication? These days, we so tend to go straight to text messaging. I do not recommend this. I do not recommend texting back and forth with contractor, your designer, with things on the project. What ends up happening is things get lost, miscommunication happens, and it's really hard to track things and communicate through text. My suggestion, and again, these are expectations that you want to talk through with the people that are working on the project. What is the preferred method of communication? Our preferred method of communication is email. We email everything. We have a system where all of our emails, ingoing and outgoing, funnel through our program. So we're not having to filter through our inbox to find where was that email that so-and-so said this. It's all housed in one spot, and we don't have to fish through things. It doesn't get lost in my text thread of a million different text messages that I have to scroll through and remember, what did so-and-so say? So we prefer email. I also suggest that when, not if, when, remember, expectation, there is no perfect project. When a problem arises, that it be addressed in a phone call. And I suggest this because in email and through text, things can be misconstrued. And when emotions are high, it is a lot easier to not come to a good space through text or email. Phone calls and that human interaction, remembering that the person that you are speaking to is also another human being, remembering that they too are imperfect, and being able to have grace for one another within hard conversations, that happens through phone calls. Now, with that said, I also recommend once those conversations are had over the phone, that there is a follow-up email either from the client or from the contractor. Again, set the expectation who is going to send the email that says, per our conversation, right? Per our conversation, so professional. You list out, what did you talk about? What was the conversation? What was said? Because you never want to get yourself in a situation where it's he said, she said. Well, you said you were going to fix this by doing X, Y, and Z, and their understanding is completely different, and it happened in a phone call, and there's no way to track it. Yes, phone calls are important for that person-to-person interaction. However, we also forget. We are forgetful people. And sometimes what we hear isn't actually what was said, and we want to make sure that at the end we are on the same page. So follow-up email, this is a conversation we had, and make sure that there is a response in agreement that that is what was said, that this is the solution, this is what we came up with, this is what we're doing next, what happens next, here's what to expect. This is what we discussed. Laying it all out there in email. You always want written communication. I can't tell you how hard it is as a contractor and a designer to have multiple projects going on at once and be having multiple conversations with different homeowners and clients. It's hard to remember. Okay, and I'm hoping that that's not just my age. I just had a birthday. I think that this goes across the board, that when you have multiple things going on, it's hard to remember sometimes. So when we document it, when we take meeting minutes every time there is a meeting or a conversation and it is documented, you don't have to remember. It's all captured. And that alleviates stuff off of your plate. And as the homeowner, that gives you peace of mind knowing that you're on the same page with the people that are doing your project. So I highly recommend email and keeping things together in that way. You want to talk and set expectations around emergencies. What do we do in emergency? Let's say I'm a homeowner and all of a sudden I have water gushing out from the pipe that is where the sink used to be, and there wasn't water coming out of it when the contractors left, and now there is. What are we doing in emergencies? Who are we calling? How do we get a hold of somebody? What is the process? What are expectations that you can set or things that you can direct your clients in proactively thinking about if something happens? Are you showing your clients where the water shutoff valve is at the street? Are you walking through with them, this is what I did to turn this off. If something happens, do this. Are we talking about electrical? And if there's no electricity to this, are we walking through what could happen in an emergency and what are the things that should take place if an emergency occurs? Those are so important because when you are in an emergency, the emotions are high, the panic sets in, and when you don't know what to do and it hasn't been talked about, it just heightens the experience of the emergency. When you've already talked about it and you kind of have a plan for if something happens and you know exactly where to go as a homeowner to do what needs to be done, it alleviates some of that stress. So emergencies are so important to talk about. Also setting the expectations around what is an emergency. Okay. We all have different ideas and opinions of what an emergency actually is. And so making sure that when we're talking about what the process is for an emergency, also defining what an emergency is and what constitutes an emergency. Something else you want to talk about is change orders. Change orders, they will happen. They're going to happen. There will be at least one change order on your project. Are you setting that expectation with your clients ahead of time? Are you telling clients, like, I have estimated this to the best of my ability. Chances are something is going to come up and there is probably going to be a change order. We tell our clients to allow for 20%. 20% for the unknowns that might come up that might result in change orders. Are you setting that expectation with your client? Or is your client going in thinking that the estimate is what it is, and if a change order comes up, they're panicking because they don't have more money. They have put all the money, what the estimate is all that they have, and there's no more wiggle room. Setting those expectations from the beginning. As a client, as a homeowner, I'm setting this expectation with you right now. There will be change orders. They might be small. If you get away with a project with no change orders, just consider it a win, an added bonus. But go into the project expecting that there will be change orders. You want to talk about payment schedules. How often are you paying? When are you paying? What does that look like? Setting that expectation. Is it progress billing? What determines that progress billing? Am I paying for work before the work is complete? Have those conversations. Discuss what the expectations are around when invoices are going to be issued and how much time the client has to pay those invoices. Set expectations of if invoices aren't paid by a certain time, that the project is going to have to come to a halt. In order for us to proceed, we need a progress payment. Are those expectations set? As a homeowner, do you have a clear expectation of when you are going to be billed and when payments are going to be due? Asking those questions and making sure that you have a clear understanding of that before the project begins. All things that you want to talk about, homeowner to contractor, designer, these are all expectations and conversations that you want to set prior to a project. Again, in writing. In writing, we forget. I forget. He said, she said. It's a thing. When somebody thinks that something's going to happen a certain way and the other thinks it's going to happen another way, and it's not documented or written down in an agreement that you have both come to, that's when conflict really starts to arise in a project. So you want to set clear expectations from the beginning for all, and I've only covered some of the things. There are so many other things that you can dig into and talk about prior to a project to make sure that you are on the same page. And as a homeowner, ask all the questions. Be relentless. Be annoying. Ask every single question you can possibly think of prior to the project starting, because your contractor or designer just may have forgotten to communicate that piece of information, or not realize that that's a question that you have. It's hard to cover everything, and it's hard to know what questions a client may have if they're not asking them. So ask them all. No question is too small. No question is petty. You know, what is it that our teachers always told us? There's no stupid question. Okay, I'm teacher mode. There's no stupid question. Okay, ask the questions. If you do not ask questions and you get into the project, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be trouble. And most likely that trouble is only going to be because of unmet expectations that weren't clearly defined from the beginning of the project. So ask those questions. Okay, expectation number 3 that I just want to put out there is that at some point in your project, most likely you're going to want to rip out your hair. That is if you have hair still. It's just, there is a roller coaster of emotions that happen throughout a renovation, especially if you're living in a renovation. It's a whole unique set of emotions that happen when you're actually living in a home that you're doing a renovation in. And I just want to set the expectation with you now as a homeowner that renovations are exhausting. They are exhausting. Even if it runs smoothly, it is still exhausting, because you have people coming in and out of your house most days of the week. You are still trying to do life around these people. Part of your house is ripped up. You might not have a kitchen. How are you cooking meals? Are you eating out every night? That sounds really glorious and glamorous in the beginning. But when you are on your 4th week of eating out every single night, A, it becomes expensive. B, you quickly become sick of it. Unless that's what you do already. I don't know. There are some people out there who only eat out. But what I'm saying is, part of your house is ripped up. Your life is not, you cannot operate the same that you do when you're not in the middle of a construction zone. And that is wearing. It's exhausting. And emotions start to run high. So expect that, know that, anticipate that, so that when it happens, you can just, accept and know that you knew this was coming. You knew this was a part of the process. You're not surprised when it arrives, and you're able to work through it. Okay. It also can help you kind of decide, is living in the renovation the best option for you? Or is getting an Airbnb or staying with mom and dad or a friend, is that a better option? If you have kids, if you have animals, what does that really look like? And what is going to be the best scenario for you? So knowing that the emotions are going to come. There's going to be highs and lows. It's going to be a roller coaster. You're going to be super excited at times. Certain phases start to finish, and other times you're going to want to scream at everyone to get out of your house. I challenge you not to do that, but there's going to be times where you feel that way. So just know that is going to happen. I also want to set the expectation with you that it's not over until it's over. And what I mean by that is a lot of times homeowners will see progress in their project where the cabinet people came in and they installed all the cabinets. And so they feel as though the cabinets should be done and the cabinets should be perfect and there should be nothing wrong with the cabinets. And that's not the case. There are different phases that happen throughout a project where people come back to finish things up at the end. And they come back to do the adjustments on the doors, or they come back to install the hardware on the cabinets. And that getting into the weeds, as I like to call it, right? When one phase is done and we go and we check in on the project and we notice all these things and we're super disappointed because they haven't done the quality of work that we were expecting. It's not over until it's over. So there are elements of the project that are going to seemingly feel unfinished until the last day of the project. And that is normal. It's normal. There are different phases. And so knowing that will give you some peace of mind of that you don't need to get in and I don't like to use the word nitpick, but get in and evaluate everybody's work during the phases of the project because it is an evolving process and there are phases when people come back. Now, if you have a question about it, I suggest you ask, right? So I noticed that the cabinet doors are not aligned. Is that gonna be fixed somewhere down the road? And your contractor and project manager should be able to answer those questions for you. At the end of the day, there will be a final walkthrough. There should be a final walkthrough. So, expect that. And if nothing's mentioned of that, please, as a homeowner, mention that to your contractor. Will there be a final walkthrough? Will there be a final punch list? There should be. There should be a final punch list. There should be a final walkthrough where you, as a homeowner, get to walk through the project with the contractor, with the designer, and say, did we cover everything? Is everything done, to the way that we wanted it to be done? And are there problems? And can we point out those problems? And then that gives the contractor an opportunity to go back and fix things that need to be fixed. And the contractor will have their own set of punch list items. So just know going into your project that things don't fully complete in each phase. It's like the project schedule. It ebbs, it flows, it moves. There's different phases, and it's not over until it's over. So, with that said, I think it's time to be over with this episode because we are creeping up here in time and I want to keep this a reasonable listening time. So, I want to end with one final story of a client that we recently just did a kitchen renovation for. And as we do each project, we gradually add to our list of expectations that we set with clients. New things come up and we add them to our little toolbox of these are things that we should discuss with clients ahead of time. And so this recent kitchen renovation we did, setting all those expectations up at the beginning of the project, having clear communication throughout the project. Things still came up. There were still issues. It all in all ran very smooth though. And at the end of the project, the client told me, he said, I thought that this was going to be a lot more intrusive on our time and our space. And I thought that it was gonna be more of a headache than it actually ended up being. And I loved that. I loved that so much because it is that idea that if we go into it thinking that it's going to be one way and it ends up being better, we are pleasantly surprised. It is a good experience. Now, if it's the opposite of that, and we go into it thinking it's going to be one way and it's way worse than what we thought it was going to be, that's not where we want to be. That's not how we want to feel. So, setting the expectations ahead of time that this could happen or this might be the case. Then, when it isn't that and it's actually better than what we're expecting, the whole experience is better for everyone involved. So I hope that has been helpful for you guys today to think about and explore what are expectations that we should have when embarking on a renovation, and knowing that these expectations that we set ahead of time can either lend to a much better experience than we were anticipating or a much worse experience than what we were anticipating. So, what coin do you want to be on? I highly suggest digging in, setting these expectations, making sure we're having these conversations before embarking on your renovation. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hey, if I have left you with more questions than answers about your renovation project, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. You can find me at Studio Red Interior Design. If you are looking for step-by-step insight on how to design and manage your own renovation, you can join the Renovation Roadmap course. There is information on that in the show notes. And if you have found this episode helpful, I encourage you to subscribe and share it with others that might find value in it as well. Also, if you haven't already, I would love for you to rate this podcast so more people can benefit from it. I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time.